Lena Matthews stood tearfully beneath a missing poster of her husband. Tyler, her hands trembling, her voice cracking, but what no one knew was that she had buried him under their garage. Just hours after she killed him, Lena Matthews was the kind of woman people trusted. Her smile was gentle, her voice soft, and her presence comforting. Everyone in Maple Glen, a quiet suburb nestled between tall trees and wide lawns, knew her as Tyler's loving wife. Their golden retriever, Max, was known for wandering into neighbors' yards, and Lena always laughed as she jogged after him. People saw them walking together most evenings, hand in hand, talking quietly as the sun dipped behind the houses. If any couple seemed safe from tragedy, it was Lena and Tyler. No one had seen or heard from Tyler since Sunday night. His last known communication was a short message to a colleague about grading papers. One colleague recalled him saying he felt like he was being watched at home, like Lena had started going through his things. Another said Tyler had started staying later at work, avoiding going home too early. Still, none of them imagined something sinister. At worst, they thought maybe the marriage was strained, but nothing prepared them for what would come next. His phone, still at home, offered no clues. She volunteered at local events, baked cookies for fundraisers, and always remembered birthdays. She had recently taken out a new life insurance policy on Tyler. Another remembered hearing what sounded like metal dragging across concrete early that morning. No one thought much of it at the time. Now it seemed strange. She hugged neighbors, accepted casseroles, and thanked everyone for their support. But behind the scenes, some officers noticed inconsistencies. Lena never asked certain questions. She didn't call the station for updates, didn't inquire about search teams, and seemed almost detached at times, like she was following a script. She never broke down in private, never lashed out in frustration, never begged detectives to do more. She simply smiled sadly and thanked them for their efforts. Officers found it unsettling. Lena had told police he left the house at 6 a.m. for his run, but no witness had seen him. No traffic or park camera caught him on his route. It was as though Tyler never left home. Most spouses of missing persons swing between hope and despair. Lena was too calm. Her husband, Tyler Matthews, was just as respected. She said Tyler never missed work, never went anywhere without letting her know, and was deeply committed to his students. Her voice trembled as she held up a flyer with his photo, a smiling man in his 30s, with short brown hair, a lean build, and kind eyes. Volunteers helped her plaster missing posters across gas stations, telephone poles, and grocery stores. She passed them out with shaking hands, stopping strangers and asking if they had seen her husband. A high school science teacher, he had spent over a decade guiding students through chemistry labs and biology projects. Together, they looked like the perfect couple, stable, happy, and inseparable. They had been married for nearly 9 years and lived in a charming 2-story house with a red front door and flower beds Lena tended to every weekend. So, when Lena reported her husband missing on a crisp Monday morning, the town was shaken. She told the police Tyler had gone for his usual morning run around 6 a.m. and never returned. She found his phone charging in the kitchen, his wallet on the hall table, and his car still in the driveway. The alarm had gone off at its usual time. The bed was neatly made, and there was no sign of forced entry. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. Within hours, Lena was on local news, her eyes red and swollen, pleading for help. The police began a standard investigation. They checked hospitals, reviewed security footage from nearby intersections, and spoke to coworkers and friends. Lena gave interviews. She stood by candlelight at a vigil held in Tyler's honor. A few of Tyler's friends raised concerns privately. They mentioned that in recent months, Tyler had seemed more withdrawn, less enthusiastic about family life. As days passed and leads dried up, Lena's behavior stayed oddly consistent. Neighbors started whispering. One woman swore she saw Lena hosing down the garage the same day Tyler disappeared. Even stranger was the fact that Tyler's smartwatch was still tracking his heartbeat until exactly 6:17 a.m. Monday morning, when it suddenly stopped. Still, Lena continued her campaign. She held another vigil. She sat on her porch with a framed photo of Tyler beside her, watching reporters set up tripods on her lawn. She told everyone she wouldn't stop until he was found. She described their last meal together in detail: pasta, garlic bread, and red wine. She said they had talked about vacation plans and laughed about something their dog had done. Her memory was perfect. Too perfect. Privately, officers began to dig deeper. They looked into Lena's finances. The case grew darker as suspicions piled up. But for now, the town still saw Lena as the grieving wife. They brought her flowers, sent her prayers, and lit candles on her porch. No one could imagine the truth, that she wasn't waiting for Tyler to come home. She already knew exactly where he was. It was early morning when the doorbell rang at the Matthews residence. Lena opened it calmly, dressed in a beige cardigan and black leggings, holding a half-filled mug of coffee. But to seasoned investigators, it was suspicious. The home looked too tidy for a place under stress. Not a single pillow was out of line. No dishes were in the sink. The air smelled faintly of lemon cleaner, and the garbage cans were too empty for a household that had supposedly gone through the emotional chaos of a disappearance. 2 detectives stood outside. They had come with a warrant to search the home. Lena didn't argue. One neighbor had a motion-activated camera that faced the street. She had told no one about this trip. When asked, she said it was garden waste, but police found no sign of it at any local disposal site. But she had spent over an hour on her laptop. Forensic analysis revealed a trail of disturbing internet searches. How long does it take a body to decompose in concrete? Can bleach destroy DNA? Do cadaver dogs smell through cement? They found something strange. A unit rented under her maiden name just 20 miles away. It had been accessed only a few times in the last year, once, the day after Tyler disappeared. These weren't questions from a panicked wife. They were cold, calculated inquiries made in silence while the rest of the town searched for her husband. She wrote things like, "It's almost over, and soon we'll be free." Carter's responses seemed hopeful but unaware. He appeared to believe she was divorcing her husband, not killing him. His wedding ring placed inside a small zippered pouch, and a burner phone chip, prepaid and recently used. On the screen were texts between Lena and a man named Carter Doyle. She couldn't explain where she went or why she hadn't mentioned it before. That Tyler was controlling and that she was planning to leave. She never told him about the life insurance policy. She never told him that she had already started planning Tyler's disappearance. She said she didn't remember the burner phone. She said the texts were taken out of context. But the pieces were beginning to fit together, the forged insurance documents, the cleaned blood stain, the new concrete, the camera footage, the internet searches, the affair. It revealed a critical detail. On the morning Tyler allegedly went jogging, no one was seen leaving the Matthews house, not Tyler, not Lena, not even the dog. 2 weeks before he vanished, Tyler had confided that he thought someone had been going through his briefcase. His class notes were misplaced and personal papers had vanished. They just needed one more piece, something that would confirm what they suspected all along. Lena hadn't lost her husband. She had hidden him. And the truth wasn't buried in memories or lies, it was buried in concrete. He had no proof, but he was uneasy. He even mentioned his concern that Lena had grown distant, almost secretive. That small remark sparked another line of investigation. There was no activity until 9:41 a.m., when Lena walked outside holding a missing flyer and taped it to a telephone pole across the street. She spoke to reporters in a trembling voice, her hands wrapped tightly around Tyler's photo. She stood in front of the grocery store, handing out flyers to strangers, acting like someone who was slowly falling apart. But her behavior was being studied closely now. That was 3.5 hours after she claimed Tyler had vanished. She simply nodded and stepped aside, her expression unreadable. She said Tyler had cut his hand doing a DIY project a month earlier and had bled on the rug. She had forgotten to throw it out. Her story didn't match the volume of blood or the location, but she stuck to it. Her voice was calm, almost rehearsed. The officers moved through the house carefully. At first glance, everything seemed ordinary. The kitchen was clean. The living room was spotless. Nothing looked out of place. When they reached the basement, a faint odor hung in the air. Not strong enough to alarm the average person, but enough for trained noses to recognize it immediately. It was the smell of bleach. The concrete floor had been scrubbed, but near the edge of the room, behind a stack of plastic storage bins, they found something out of place. When asked, Lena explained it was a home repair. She had noticed a crack and asked a handyman to patch it. But there were no receipts, no records of any hired work, and no one in the neighborhood had seen a worker come or go. That patch of cement would become the center of everything. A rug partially rolled up was stuffed awkwardly into a trash bag. It had dark stains on one end. A preliminary test confirmed it was blood. DNA analysis would later identify it as Tyler's. Lena offered an explanation. Detectives noticed something else. The garage had a newly poured concrete slab in one corner, smoother and lighter than the surrounding floor. Back at the station, the lead detective requested access to security footage from nearby homes. Other footage showed Lena driving out of the neighborhood later that day with something large and flat wrapped in a blue tarp in the trunk of her car. Her phone records added to the puzzle. The morning of Tyler's disappearance, she had called no one, not the police, not friends, not even Tyler's work. Still, Lena never broke character. She attended the church vigil, eyes cast downward, holding a candle. One of Tyler's co-workers came forward with a detail that changed everything. Officers checked surveillance cameras at local storage facilities. Cross-referencing with names connected to Lena, they obtained another warrant and visited the unit. It was dusty and mostly empty, except for 3 items. Tyler's running shoes immaculately clean. The messages revealed a long-running affair. Lena had been seeing Carter for over a year. She had told him her marriage was dead. The messages grew darker in the weeks leading up to Tyler's death. When confronted with the evidence, Lena didn't flinch. She denied everything. She said the storage unit was for winter clothes. The detectives knew they were close. The search for Tyler Matthews had shifted from a missing persons case to a full criminal investigation. The evidence found in the basement, garage, and storage unit all pointed to one chilling truth. Lena was not the grieving wife she pretended to be. She was the prime suspect in her husband's disappearance and possibly his death. But still, there was no body. Without it, the case was circumstantial. It had GPS data, location pings that showed Lena had made late-night trips to the storage facility more than once. On one visit, she stayed for nearly an hour. Her emails revealed correspondence with a divorce attorney she never hired. A woman named Danielle, who had once worked with Lena at a real estate office, came forward with a disturbing memory. Months earlier, during an after-work dinner, Lena had made a strange comment about how some people just disappear and no one ever finds them. At the time, it was brushed off as a dark joke. But Danielle said she never forgot the look in Lena's eyes when she said it. Cold, detached, calculating. She had inquired about the legal process months earlier but never moved forward. It turned out she had a pattern of manipulation. An ex-coworker accused her of forging signatures on documents years ago, though no charges were filed. They showed her the photos from the garage. They showed her the hammer found near the body, stained with dried blood. She was placed under arrest for the murder of her husband. News spread through the town like wildfire. The woman who had cried on camera handed out flyers, and lit candles in her front yard had killed the man she claimed to love. His parents, who had flown in from out of state, identified the remains. They sobbed in court when the forensic pathologist explained how Tyler died. They asked why no one had seen the signs, why no one had stopped Lena sooner. The community was stunned. People pulled down the missing posters. Some even felt ashamed for ever believing her story. They showed her the cement receipt, the burner phone, and the messages to Carter Doyle. His texts supported that claim. While emotionally involved, he had never discussed violence, never suggested harming Tyler, and seemed to genuinely believe Lena was divorcing her husband the normal way. Still, his life was shattered. He lost clients at the gym, and his name became linked to a murder he hadn't committed. Lena didn't cry. She didn't scream. She sat quietly, her eyes fixed on the table. For a long time she said nothing. With the help of digital forensics, police cracked them open. Inside were dozens of screenshots of Tyler's emails, bank statements, and even his medical records. As they chipped away at the concrete, the stench began to rise, acrid, sour, and unmistakable. It took less than an hour to expose the body. Wrapped in the same blue tarp Lena had purchased, held together with duct tape, and placed in a shallow depression under the cement, was the decomposing body of Tyler Matthews. She used her charm, her image, and her tears as tools. While the town mourned and searched, she continued her performance, fully aware of what lay buried beneath her garage. The autopsy later revealed he had suffered massive blunt force trauma to the back of the head. He likely died instantly. Lena had been tracking everything. She knew about his credit card charges, where he spent his time, even the names of students who emailed him after hours. It was obsessive, controlling, and it showed a disturbing level of surveillance that Tyler himself might not have fully understood. Another said Lena had lied about having a miscarriage for sympathy. These details weren't criminal, but they painted a picture of someone who knew how to deceive and who did it without guilt. It seemed she had explored ending the marriage through lawful means before deciding on a far more permanent solution. Bank records showed a sudden transfer of $50,000 into a private account shortly after the new life insurance policy was activated. Investigators suspected this was her escape fund. Investigators now believe this was when she stashed Tyler's belongings, his shoes, his watch, and his ring. Investigators needed something irrefutable proof that Tyler wasn't just missing, but murdered, and that Lena Matthews was responsible. Detectives began reviewing Lena's movements in the days following Tyler's disappearance. They looked into financial activity, store receipts, surveillance footage, anything that might connect her to suspicious behavior. Forensic experts were called in to analyze the patch. Using ground-penetrating radar, they found an anomaly beneath the slab, something roughly human in shape, about 6 feet long. A court order was filed immediately. The garage floor was to be broken open. They found a receipt from a hardware store dated the day before Tyler vanished. Lena had purchased a 60-pound bag of quick-set cement, heavy-duty gloves, a large tarp, and a new shovel. As expected, Lena's were present, along with an unknown partial print that didn't match Tyler or Carter Doyle. It was too smudged to identify, but it suggested she might not have acted entirely alone. The possibility of an accomplice emerged, though there was no clear evidence yet to support that theory. Still, it was a lead worth following. The cashier remembered her because she joked about doing backyard work by herself. At the time, it seemed harmless. Now, it was damning. The newly poured concrete in the garage was already suspicious, but this receipt gave it new weight. Meanwhile, detectives turned their attention back to the burner phone found in the storage unit. The device held more than just romantic texts. The forensic team dusted the phone and plastic bag for prints. At the same time, more of Lena's private life began to unravel. Then came a break in the case. That memory gave investigators grounds to revisit Lena's previous work and social relationships. The search of Lena's laptop also revealed encrypted folders. Then, on a Tuesday morning, the garage floor was finally broken open. It was quiet, no press. Just the forensic team, the lead detective, and a few uniformed officers. That discovery changed everything. Lena was brought in for questioning again. But this time, they didn't ask if she had seen Tyler. Without a lawyer, she refused to answer further questions. Carter Doyle was brought in for questioning as well. He denied knowing anything about the murder. In the end, the discovery of Tyler's body ended the mystery, but not the heartbreak. The answer was simple and devastating. Lena Matthews had hidden in plain sight. The courtroom was silent as Lena Matthews entered in handcuffs, her face emotionless, her blonde hair neatly tied back. The woman once viewed as a pillar of the community now sat behind a defense table, accused of the most cold-blooded crime the town had ever witnessed. On the morning of March 18th, Lena had made breakfast, fed the dog, and pretended life was normal. Tyler never went for a run. Instead, he walked into the garage to help her lift a box she had placed near the back wall. That was when she struck him. The blow came from behind, most likely with the hammer found beside his body. Detectives outlined how Lena's internet search history showed her reading about body disposal methods weeks in advance. His mother wore a black sweater and clutched a tissue, her face drained of color. His father stared straight ahead, his hands folded tightly in his lap. They had trusted Lena, welcomed her, loved her. Now they were hearing the horrific details of how she took their son's life. One entry read, Will police search a garage for a missing person? She didn't cry when photos of Tyler's body were shown. He described Lena's plan not as an act of desperation, but of ambition motivated by money, secrecy, and freedom. The insurance policy, the hidden affair, the cold cleanup. It all pointed to one conclusion. Lena Matthews knew exactly what she was doing. She didn't react when her own Google searches were read aloud. Her silence, while her legal right, only deepened the public suspicion that she felt no remorse. She sat still, with her hands folded neatly in front of her, her eyes rarely moving from the judge. Another simply read, "How to kill husband quietly." The coroner's report showed that Tyler died within seconds, suffering a massive skull fracture. There were no signs of struggle. No defensive wounds, he hadn't seen it coming. Her sentence was life in prison without the possibility of parole. The courtroom erupted in muffled gasps. Tyler's mother sobbed into her hands. His father nodded slowly, as if the verdict confirmed something he already knew in his heart. In its place, they planted a tree in a small flower bed. Her name is rarely mentioned in Maple Glen anymore, but every so often, someone will pass a telephone pole that still has the faded corner of a missing flyer, half-torn, fluttering in the breeze. A reminder of the time when everyone believed the lie, and the woman who buried the truth beneath her own feet. There's no plaque, no marker, just a quiet space where neighbors sometimes pause, remembering a story that began with love and ended with betrayal, that Tyler was controlling, unfaithful, and dismissive. He suggested Lena had snapped after years of emotional strain. But there was no record, no journal, no witness to any of those claims. For months, residents had gathered in parks and churches, hoping for Tyler's safe return. They had prayed with Lena, cried with her, believed in her. Now they had to reconcile the truth that the woman they supported had been lying all along. That she had taken part in every vigil, every flyer, every news interview, knowing her husband was already dead. She described Lena as narcissistic and manipulative, someone who could mimic grief without feeling it. Her calm demeanor, her public appearances, even the missing posters, these weren't signs of a desperate wife. They were part of the performance. Each step calculated to maintain her innocence, to mislead the community, and to buy herself time. No friends or colleagues had ever heard Lena speak negatively about Tyler. Her own text to Carter Doyle, the man she was secretly seeing, referred to Tyler as boring and in the way. Never dangerous. Never abusive, just inconvenient. News crews swarmed outside. Reporters whispered into microphones as her image flickered across TV screens. He confirmed that he and Lena had been romantically involved for over a year. He admitted she had promised to leave Tyler, but said he had no knowledge of her plan to kill him. His messages backed him up. Nothing in their exchanges indicated he knew what she had done. When shown photos of the burner phone and the hidden storage unit, Carter looked visibly shaken. He had believed he was part of a love story. Instead, he had been unknowingly written into a crime. Wife accused of killing husband and burying him under the garage, the headlines read. But even with all the media attention, the town wasn't looking for a scandal anymore. They were searching for an explanation. Why did Lena do it? The prosecution began with the timeline. It was meticulous, precise, and horrifying. The timeline showed that Lena then wrapped his body in the blue tarp, cleaned the blood with bleach, and dragged the body to the back corner of the garage. For the rest of the day, she went through the motions. She deleted his recent emails. She answered texts from his coworkers, pretending he had gone for a run and left his phone. She made a grocery store run. That evening, she poured the quick-set concrete and sealed Tyler beneath it. By the next morning, she was crying on the phone with the police, reporting him as missing. What shocked the courtroom most wasn't just what Lena had done, it was how long she had been planning it. The insurance policy, the burner phone, the fake email accounts used to research chemicals and decomposition. All of it pointed to a murder plotted carefully over time. This wasn't an impulsive act, it was premeditated and precise. The evidence was overwhelming. Forensic specialists explained how the blood on the rug matched Tyler's DNA and how the new slab of cement showed evidence of tampering. In the back of the courtroom, Tyler's family sat in silence, absorbing every word. Lena's defense attorney painted a very different picture. He claimed Lena had been in an emotionally abusive marriage. The court also heard from Carter. His testimony was short but important. A psychologist hired by the prosecution gave further insight into Lena's behavior. Despite overwhelming evidence, Lena refused to testify. She showed no emotion during the trial. In closing arguments, the prosecutor reminded the jury of what this case was truly about: a man who loved his wife, who trusted her, and who died because of that trust. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When the verdict was read, Lena remained motionless. Guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, evidence tampering, insurance fraud. Lena was led away without a word. The town of Maple Glen would never be the same. The Matthews home was eventually sold. The new owners had the garage demolished. Lena Matthews is now inmate number 472,913. She spends her days in a correctional facility, far from the manicured lawns and white fences of her old life. After the verdict, life in Maple Glen moved on, but not in the way it had before. The town, once proud of its quiet streets and friendly faces, had become a place marked by caution and memory. People still waved to each other across yards, but there was a lingering tension in the air, a quiet understanding that things could never return to what they were before Tyler Matthews disappeared. They scattered his ashes at a nearby lake where he used to fish as a boy. No reporters were invited, no cameras allowed. Podcasts dissected her every move, labeling her as cold, calculated, and dangerous. Internet sleuths speculated whether she had considered killing again if she hadn't been caught. Others thought she had snapped under pressure. But there was one undeniable fact. She had made the choice to end a life old coworkers described her as manipulative. She had stolen credit for others' work and lied about personal tragedies to gain sympathy. One former friend claimed Lena once pretended to have cancer to avoid paying back a loan. There were no previous crimes, nothing that showed up on background checks, but the pattern was clear. Lena had always known how to manipulate perception and bury the truth beneath layers of concrete and lies. Her face became infamous, her mugshot circulating alongside chilling headlines. The wife who faked her grief. His former students remembered him as kind and encouraging, the kind of teacher who stayed late to help with science fair projects. But what was known, and painfully so, was that his life ended at the hands of someone he loved. Someone he trusted to stand beside him, not behind him in silence with a weapon. Her only statement was silence, her only legacy the story she could no longer control. One student recalled how Tyler had once lent him money for lunch when he forgot his wallet. A reminder that sometimes the person hanging missing posters isn't searching for answers. Another said he helped her believe she could be the first in her family to go to college. His impact was quiet but lasting, something Lena could never erase. But beneath the surface, there was something different, an awareness that evil can wear a smile, that monsters don't always look like monsters. The lead investigator, now a local figure of quiet fame, spoke at conferences about how the case was solved. Folded inside old church hymnals even found in a storage box at the local high school. She had gone from a woman with a house, a dog, a marriage, and a future to a number behind bars. Some inmates feared her. Others were curious, but most simply avoided her. There was a coldness in her eyes that never thawed even after conviction. Each one felt like a relic of a haunting performance, a fake cry for help from a woman who already knew where her husband was. He used it as a lesson about how killers can hide in plain sight, how the most convincing stories can be lies, and how small inconsistencies can break a case open. She buried him and blamed the world. He changed gyms, moved to another state, and erased any trace of their connection. One neighbor, an elderly woman who used to bring her cookies, couldn't sleep for weeks after the truth came out. She said she saw Lena digging in the yard one night but thought nothing of it. That guilt lingered like smoke in the air. Publicly, he gave one brief statement, saying he had no knowledge of Lena's plans and was deeply disturbed by what happened. Privately, he vanished. His name, once tied to scandal, faded from the headlines. But in Maple Glen, people still wondered if he ever truly believed her story. It was not about headlines anymore. It was about grieving a son who had trusted too deeply and died for it. His story had left an invisible scar on every corner of the neighborhood. The house where he once lived with Lena stood empty for months, its windows dark, the lawn overgrown. It was finally sold to a young couple unfamiliar with the details of the case, but longtime residents knew. They avoided talking about it. Some crossed the street rather than walk past. Others slowed down their cars when they passed, staring at the garage that had once concealed so much. Tyler's parents, devastated by their loss, held a private memorial on what would have been his 38th birthday. Lena's trial had ended, but the story didn't fade. True crime documentaries covered the case in detail. In prison, Lena quickly became known among staff and inmates. She kept to herself, rarely speaking to anyone. She took up sewing in the prison workshop and refused all interview requests. Even the most sensational media offers were turned down. Whether it was guilt, pride, or something darker, no one knew. But what remained clear was her refusal to speak about the crime. She never offered an apology, never expressed remorse, never explained her reasons. Some believed that Lena had always been capable of murder, that it wasn't a sudden decision, but something she had carried inside her, masked by smiles and charm. The investigation into Lena's past revealed more troubling signs. Her relationship with Carter Doyle dissolved in silence. He never visited her in prison. In the wake of the trial, the police department underwent changes. The missing posters Lena had plastered across town were long gone, but a few still turned up in odd places. Tucked into books at the library, some residents struggled to forgive themselves. They had hugged Lena, prayed with her, held her hand at vigils. In the years that followed, Tyler's name was added to a local scholarship fund for aspiring teachers. No one truly knew what Tyler thought in the final moments of his life. Whether he saw the hammer before it struck, whether he understood what was happening. For Lena Matthews, prison was now her world. The same walls every day, the same schedule, no visitors, no letters. Years later, when the case had settled into legend, a journalist tried to reach out to Lena for an interview. The letter was returned unopened. Maple Glen remained a town changed. The sidewalks still carried footsteps. The lawns were trimmed, and children played outside. And so the story of Tyler and Lena Matthews lived on, not just as a tale of betrayal, but as a warning. They're covering their track.